Today, in this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to learn about terrains in Unity and do some character movements as well. So terrains are where you can really, create some amazing things out there, really beautiful scenes and add nice textures and trees and really, really enhance your 3D game. So I'll show you the end product first of all. So I'm just going to hit run. I have my little cube here. I have a camera that's going to be following it. So we did a bit of cameras last lesson, and now we're gonna set up a camera to follow our character. Our character is gonna be a simple cube. So he's gonna walk there. There's a tree in the way. So I created this scene, but I also created like obstacles. Well, not obstacles. Well, actually obstacles with like trees and stuff, but like also different paths and routes that you could take. I'm not even sure, where I'm going half the time. So there's trees here, but you can actually get around the trees. They set it up that way. There we go. No. So yeah, so you have the obstacles there. And I'll head back. I'll go this way. All right. Yeah, there's actually these trees I can get around. I put in a bunch of dead ends as well. All right, so this is the end product for today. All right, so let's start by creating a new project. So I'm gonna ask you to go ahead and create a new 3D project in Unity. I've already got one open, so I'm not gonna go through those steps. And I'm just gonna go ahead and show you that, okay, so we have here our sample scene. What we're going to do is we're going to add a terrain. Okay, so the first thing we do is go to Game Object, 3D Object, Terrain. Right, and here it is. I'm going to zoom out quite a bit. It's actually a very large terrain, right? It spans a large area, and for our lesson today, I'm going to reduce the area here. So with the terrain object, the terrain editor is enabled. And also you can see a new file you can see here has been created called new terrain. I could rename it. So let's see here if I rename it to like, my terrain, for lack of a better name. Let's just double check. If I click on terrain, it has also been renamed to my terrain. So we're still okay. All right. What you should do is, as you've kind of figured from my past lessons, is try and create separate folders to do separate things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the plus sign and say folder. And I'm going to call this one terrains. There's only one terrain, but I'm just going to call it terrains with a plural. Just drag it in there. So now it's organized. And the other thing I do is, going back to terrain here, is reduce the size of it. But before I do, let's talk a bit about the terrain editor. Okay, so there's these 5 buttons here under inspector that do different things for your terrain. The first button is to create neighboring terrains. So you can have more than one terrain. I'm going to zoom out here, and in the scene view you can see that there's these white empty squares adjacent to our terrains. We can actually create additional terrains adjacent to each of these. Right, so you can keep creating terrain. You keep growing this thing, right? You can get really large with like large worlds, and you can have different looking terrains to do different things. Like you can have like a snowy mountainous terrain, and all of a sudden right next to it have like a forest, right? So like the characters leave the tundra and enter into the forest, in a world like that. But you can really do some amazing things here. The second icon, or second button there, is for painting your terrain. We're going to spend quite a bit of time under painting terrain. I'll talk more about it in a moment. The third one is all about trees. You want to add trees? Go ahead. You can use the painting trees. The fourth one is paint details. So you can actually add further details, further textures to really soften up and really enhance the look and feel of your terrain. And finally, the last one is settings. So if you have any particular settings you want to have for the terrain, you can set them up here. Now, the first thing I'm going to start here is reduce the size of this terrain, because it's like 1,000 by 1,000 units. So if I scroll down to terrain width and terrain length, I'm going to, just for the sake of our lesson here, I'll reduce it down to 300 by 300. All right, just to scale it down quite a bit, right? Because I don't want to be, painting terrains all day long here. So 300 by 300 is still fairly large, but I think it's good enough for our application here. So I'm just going to reduce the size. So now that I have a smaller size, what I want to do is I want to start, adding some details. The first set of details I'm going to add is to start by sculpting this terrain, like adding some mountains and hills and valleys, right? And some, and then after that, we'll add some pathways between. So let's start under paint. So the second icon here, right? We'll start by, even though it says paint terrain, it actually has the ability to sculpt your terrain as well. So right below the icon paint terrain is a drop down. And here you can do a few operations. The first one we're going to do is raise or lower terrain. You can also paint like holes, put holes in your terrain if you want to have like a cliff or something, or just have like a giant hole in the ground that people fall into if you want. I'll also set height, smooth height, stamp your terrain, like you can duplicate it that way. I'll start with raise or lower terrain. Okay, now what happens this way is, what happens here is now you can actually raise and lower portions of your terrain. Now you'll see that there are brushes here. These are brushes that enable you to decide, what shape of a sculpting do I want to do. Think of it as like clay. You want to sculpt some clay and make a nice clay model or something, right? You're doing that here as well. I'm going to start with something like this built-in brush here, but you can see the different style of brushes you have at your disposal. So if I move my mouse here, you can kind of see, you kind of get the idea that you're kind of going to stamp something there. But before I do, let's just look below it. There's brush size and opacity. So brush size, if I increase the size here, now it got really big, right? So I'm going to reduce it. I think that's a good size. Actually, maybe I'll go a wee bit bigger. All right, like that. And I'll start in this bottom corner here. Right? I'm just clicking right now. Now if I click and drag, you see I can raise it, right? Now I'm just left clicking with my mouse and just stamping, clicking, and then maybe I'll just do a nice one there. Raise it. You know what? Let's put like a giant mountain right in the center. Let's see how big we can go. Right? I'm thinking Lord of the Rings here, like, the Eye of Sauron there. So I have like a giant citadel right in the middle. All right, so we'll have like a giant. Okay. And around it, all right, so it looks like every inch of my terrain, I'm going to try and do a bird's eye view. Basically, every inch of my terrain is covered, right, with some sort of rough mountainous type atmosphere. Now, I promised you some roads or some, valleys. So while you left click to raise, you can lower as well by like holding down the shift key. Like for example, I have this right here. I can actually lower this by holding the shift key and just clicking, and you can see it's shrinking a bit, but I actually like the height, so I'm gonna put it back in, right? I can hold shift to reduce it. So that's how you do that. And so what I do is I'm gonna use that and actually make little roadways in here so that our cube can walk around the roadways. I'll try a different brush so I can, maybe do something more simpler. Actually, no, I'll do a textured one, and I'll reduce the brush size. Maybe around there. Let's see what it looks like. That might be too small. Let's go about that size. I guess that's good enough. So about this size. So if I hold down the shift key on my keyboard and I just start dragging, you can see that I'm dragging and flattening things. I'm gonna make some dead ends as well. Actually, it looks like the guy's gonna fall off the cliff, so I'm gonna put something in there just to raise it, just so it looks like a wall. If I could be mean, I could actually just create like a dead end where the person has to walk all the way here and then come all the way back. That's just flat out mean. All right. Do like a little there. Actually, no, I won't be mean. Let's make a circle. So the user, that could be considered mean as well, walking in circles. Right. And yeah, so just take a moment, create a bunch of roadways, little walkways, pathways with dead ends. There. So looks like we have a bunch of pathways here, and yeah, looks like we have enough for our player to work with. So I'm just gonna hit Control S on the keyboard. I don't want to lose what I have. Now, one thing I'll point out is that I'm using 2019.4 here, but in my past lessons, I was using 2020.1. And that's because there was an error I was encountering, a little problem that was corrupting my Unity project. And the problem was that I was basically losing my terrain because when I was trying to bring in trees, there was problems with the trees. I didn't investigate further into it. I didn't take the time because I wanted to get this lesson done. But I recommend that if you're going to continue with 2020.1, you back up your project when you get to the tree portion. If you want, otherwise I recommend that you do this project in 2019.4, so that you don't run into this headache. I mean, you could try 2020.2 or 2021.1, but I'm not sure. I haven't tried those yet to see if this problem still persists. I filed a bug report with Unity, so let's see what comes of it. All right. So first thing is done. We have raised and lowered our terrain. We have basically sculpted our terrain. What we want to do is we want to add some color. Now, what I'm going to have you guys do is go to the asset store, and you're going to download a couple of textures. So, a couple of packages. So what we're going to do is go to assetstore.unity.com. All right, so I'm just going to drag the browser over. All right, I'm going to search for terrain tools. I already have that in my search history. And I've already quote unquote purchased it, but it's actually right here. It's grayed out. It's from Unity Technologies, Terrain Tools Sample Asset. Just click on that, and you'll have to, I guess, quote unquote, purchase it or download it. So go ahead and do it. It has enough textures allowed for us to be able to get started. So I'm going to click on Open in Unity. All right, and it'll say Open in Unity Editor. And what you'll have to do is you'll see the My Download button is grayed out. That's because I've already downloaded it. I already have it cached on my computer. So you can hit download, let it download the package. After you're done downloading, hit import. All right, and you'll see this window pop up. Just hit import and let it do its thing. All right, so now that it's done importing, a new folder called samples was created. So let's click on samples. You have terrains tools, And you have like terrain brushes, terrain layers, terrain textures, brush textures, and so on. Let's go back to our terrain, and let's add some color to it. So I click on terrain, and click on the brush, and change raise or lower terrain to paint texture. And you see that we have a bunch of paint brushes here. We have to actually add a terrain layer so that we can actually start painting. So you'll see here this button, edit or terrain layers. If I click on that, there's an option to create layers. We have no layers, so create a layer. And then this window pops up. All right. And I'm gonna add three layers to it. So there's moss. This will be the first one. This will be like our ground. It actually painted everything that color. And the next, if I do add layer, go for rock. All right. And the third layer I'm going to add is snow. All right. Now it added the moss. By default, the first layer gets painted on everything automatically. So since it's already done that, I'll leave that as is. So what I'll do is if I click on the rock and I scroll down, and you can change that. So instead of this being the default color, I actually would prefer the rock to be the default color. So what I do is I just click on the first layer there, the moss, and I can actually drag the rock in place, and now everything's sort of changed to that. If I don't like that, like maybe change it to sand, looks a bit better, or dirt. Right, so that looks like the layer I'm gonna go for. Right, these are all under terrain textures. The second one, yeah, I can sort of leave it at that, and then yeah, it's snow. So what I'll do is I'll start by painting the roads to be a different color. All right, so if I scroll down, I have different brushes. I can use different textures. Maybe I'll go with this brush here. You know, and if I just move over. Now I can change my brush size, so I think I'll keep it as this brush size. I think it's good enough. It'll just match the roadway I'm dealing with. I just sort of paint. Just gonna paint my roads here. And it's actually painting parts of the hills as well, so it gives a little bit of a change. There, looks like it. Oh, there's one last piece there. Looks like it covered all the roads with the detail. If I zoom in, it gets kind of dark, so probably best to add some add secondary light, which I'll do soon. All right, let's paint a different texture. So I did rock. Throw some snow. Before I throw some snow, I think I'm gonna add another layer. I'm gonna add another layer of color. Add the moss back in and just, you know, add moss to different parts of. Zoom out here. It's hard to see. I'm gonna add a secondary directional light just to get better visibility. So I'll go game object light, another directional light. That really adds some brightness. Now I can actually see stuff. So you can kind of see I'm painting different. Oh, I have snow highlighted. That's why I was like, why is this not the color? There we go. I might forego the snow. Just stick to this moss. What I want to do is I want to paint the green on the hilly portions. Okay, so now our next step is to add trees. Before we do that, I need you to go to the asset store and look for, well, you can look for trees in general. I'm going to ask you to download a specific one, speed trees. So this is the pack that Unity uses as well. So they recommended this. So if I look at speed trees, it faded out for me again, but free speed tree package is what I'm going for. But there's a ton of free trees out there. You can try any one you want. I'm just going to go with this one. All right, so I've already quote unquote purchased it, even though it's free. And the next step is to add it to Unity. So click on open in Unity editor. Right, and in package manager, again, just hit download. I'm going to hit import because I already have it cached on my computer. And just let it do its thing and import. And just hit import. All right, so the first thing you'll see is a little error at the bottom saying speed tree materials need to be regenerated. So this caused me a lot of crashes on Unity 2020.1. It was this step. It seems to be okay for 2019.4. So we go to the folder free speed trees. And if you click on each individual tree, the ones that have arrows, so I'll click on this broadleaf. And it has a button here saying apply and generate materials. So click on that. All right, and so you should see maybe a little pop-up come up really quickly doing some stuff, but overall broadleaf is done. Now there's another tree here, another broadleaf mobile. Let's get apply and regenerate materials. Okay, that's done. There's another tree here, broadleaves. I'm gonna hit it looks like that does need to be done. There's conifer. All right, conifer desktop, hit apply and regenerate. And there's a palm desktop here. And I think I've covered them all. All right, so we got some trees here that we can work with now, right? And now the next step is to actually add this to our terrain. So I'm going to go back to scene. Now, if I click on the tree, the third button here, the tree painter, what I can do now is I can start adding these trees to the scene. Okay, so the first thing to do is under paint trees, it says no trees defined. If I go to edit trees, I click on add tree, this pop-up appears. I'm just going to scale it down. And right now it says tree prefab, nothing's here. It says please assign a tree. If I click on the dot here, I can choose from one of the trees that I just did. I'll start with conifer. So this is nice and narrow. And if I hit add, conifer is now added here. Now I could just click anywhere I want and put a tree. Now that's a gigantic tree, so I'm just going to do Control Z to undo. And it says here brush size. I'm going to reduce that brush size. See what a small one looks like. So just put a tree in the middle of a mountain. Still kind of big. Let's zoom in here. If I put one there, okay, that's about the size I'm looking for. So do Control Z there. And maybe I'll go a little bit smaller because I know that it's going to cause some obstacles. If I go there too, that looks like enough for me to get around with my cube. So I can just keep painting trees wherever I want. I can put one right on a mountain there, which I know isn't really realistic, but still can put one there. The idea is to illustrate that you can add trees. Right now I'm going to take this feature of, instead of me clicking on one tree at a time, there's a button right here that says mass place trees. So I click on that. This window pops up. It's asking me how many trees do I want? 10,000. What if I said 10,000? I hit place. Let's see what it looks like. Whoa, it's like a forest. Control Z to undo that. Let's try again. If I reduce that down to 1,000, try again. Quite a bit trees. I'm gonna have trouble walking around these trees with my character. So Control Z again. Make it 100. Good, but I'm gonna go less because I want to have different types of trees here. So mass place trees. I'm gonna go with 50. Actually, no, 75. Just hit place. There we go. I'm going to add another tree. So we did the conifer. Let's do the palm. I'm just going to mass place the palms down to 75 again as well. All right. And one more. So I'm going to go edit trees, add tree, and add the broadleaf. And go mass place. Remember the checkbox, keep existing trees. So it keeps the ones that you already placed. I'll do 75 again for this third one as well. Hit place. And it's put that in as well. So I got all these trees all over the place. If I feel like I can just put some in the mountains, right? If I just feel like adding some mountain trees. Right, just to illustrate some things. So now we have some obstacles, some trees that are obstacles. All right. Put some palms. All right, so we got a bunch of trees all over the place. All right. Now, the fourth button here, paint details. This is useful for adding grass or adding some extra details, right? Like to really make things stand out. I'm going to skip over this because it already has like quite a bit of detail on it. I'm kind of happy with what I have, but if you want to go further in details, you can experiment with paint details, add a new brush, right? And you can choose whichever brush you want. I'm not going to go into this. I could probably add some rockiness to this if I wanted, right? Or just more details, but I'm going to leave it alone. Okay. So at this point, I got my terrain. I'm just going to hit Control S to save my my project so I don't lose anything. Okay. And now I have enough to work with. So that's terrain. Now, if I look at the game view, it's kind of off here, right? It's not really looking at the whole terrain or the whole scene. What we want to do is I want to add a character, and I want to be able to follow this character around. So first, let's find a space to put this guy. Okay, I'm gonna probably stick to. Yeah, it looks like a good spot right there. Okay, right there. I'm gonna add a cube. I'm gonna use my character, my hero of the game is gonna be a cube. So I'm gonna say create 3D object cube, and the cube is right there. I need to place the cube not in the middle of the mountain. So I'll put it there. Let's put it at, start off at 0. But if I double click on the cube, I know that it's half underground. So let's raise it so it's on the floor. There we go. If I want, I can increase the size a bit. Hopefully it's still good enough. There. And bring it up again above the ground. Okay. So that's my hero cube. So now what I want to do is, with my cube, I want to add some texture to it. So going to my project, I'm going to create a folder called textures. Inside texture, I'm just going to bring in a picture. Just go ahead and add whatever image you want. Let's say show and explorer. And I'm just going to do this behind the scenes. You won't be able to see it, but I already have a picture in mind. Should appear here now. There it is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new material like we did in the past. So yeah, there it is, material. I'm just going to call it cube matte. And cube matte, its shader needs to be unlit transparent. I'm just going to drag my Code Llama logo onto it. And then I'm going to drag this material, cube matte, onto my cube. There we go. So now I have some detail for my cube. All right. Now that I have the cube, what I want to do is I want to add a camera that'll follow this. Because right now, if I look at the game, main camera is just pointed here. I'm not going to use main camera for this game at all today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new camera. So game object, camera. And you can see it's already right behind here, which is actually perfect, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this camera follow this this cube. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it to follow camera. All right. And I'm actually going to make it a sub-object of cube. There's a reason for it. It's going to make it a sub-object of cube. It's going to zoom out a bit or pull away a bit. Raise up. And rotate it. All right, that looks good for now. I might have to do some more adjustments in a bit, but we'll see how things go when we run this thing after we're done creating our follow camera. All right, and so now what we need is a script that will actually act to operate on moving this character around the world, the game world. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to project again. I'm going to create a new folder. Okay, I'll just drag it over. So we got player mover here now. And now we can work on this. Now I explained scripts in our last video together, but just a brief recap. So all objects would be a sub-object of mono behavior. That's the Unity core class there, or super class. We have two methods, start and update. So start is code where you add so that you can auto launch upon loading the script, and update is added where you would where you want it to be repeated every frame. So first thing to do here is to set up what's called a character controller. We're going to add a character controller component to our cube in a moment after we're done this code, but we need something called a character controller here. Character controller is Unity's object that actually helps and aids in movement. So we're going to use that here. So I'm going to say private character controller, call it char control. Now I'm making it a private, not public on purpose. And we'll say public void speed equals 6.0f. If we, sorry, not public, sorry, public void, public float. There. Know what I was thinking there. But yeah, so speed, we'll start with 6.0. I'm making it public because you can adjust the speed in real time in the editor to see what speed suits best. So we'll see it as that. All right. Oops. Okay, leave a little space there. Now, first off, in start, this character controller, char control, I'm going to retrieve it from the game object itself. So I'm going to add character controller to the game object in a moment, and I want to get access to it. So I'm going to say char control equals get component for character controller. All right. So get component is a very powerful method for getting access to components that have been added to the game object that's been attached, that this script is being attached to. All right. So now I have access to my character controller. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method called move, and I'm going to call it inside update. So let's say private void move. Oops. Sometimes autocomplete is not your friend. There we go. Private void move. Thankfully, undo can be your best friend. So start with that. Now, inside move, what we're going to do is we're going to get access to the user's keys on the keyboard. So we're going to get the horizontal and vertical controls. So I'm going to say float horiz equals input dot get access for horizontal. Now, basically, in a nutshell, the left and right keys. Horizontal is left and right. So the left and right keys. I'm going to say float vert is equal to input dot get access for vertical. All right. Okay, so I've got, so what I'm doing with vertical is getting the up and down keys on the keyboard. Okay, now this could also be configured in Input Manager to be something else, but I'm going to use it as its default setting, which is up, down, left, and right on the keyboard. So I want to retrieve movements of up, down, left, and right from the keyboard. Now, I'm going to take advantage of a method called move inside character control. So I'm jumping ahead a moment just to show you the end result of this method, which is char control dot move. Okay, now I'll leave it empty here, which is not what I'm going for, and it causes an error because it needs an argument. Because right now what I want to do is I want to be able to call move, all right? But I need to tell it what to move by, and the argument passed in to move is what's called a vector3. Let's see if I can get it to pop up. There we go, vector3 motion, right? So it's going to actually make a move based on vector3. Vector3 is a 3D point, right? So it's a 3D point. We want it to be able to move to a 3D location based on getting this input and our speed and what's called delta time, so change in time. So I'm going to say vector3, call it move with lowercase, equals transform dot forward times vert, I'll explain this in a moment, plus transform dot right times horiz. Okay, and then let's push that into here. So move with a lowercase m. Okay, and our closing semi, right? So what's happening here? All right, so transform is with respect to the transform of the game object this thing is attached to. So like the XYZ of the game object. So it'll be attached to our cube. So this will be the XYZ of our cube, multiplying it by our vertical change, right? So up, down, left, and up and down, that is. And then we're going to take transform dot right and times it by left and right, whatever left and right keys are pressed on the keyboard. Okay, so the dot forward in the transform just gives us the basically a forward motion for us. So with respect to the 3D space, right? And we're just going to plunk it all into character control dot move and let it figure out what direction to move in. All right. Now I want to have this method executing all the time because I don't know when the user is going to call this. So because a user could be pressing up and down, left, right at any time, and input.getAccess could be retrieving this data. So I need to call move all the time. So I'm going to put move inside update here. Right, so update call is called every frame. So every frame move is going to be called. So in real time, it's going to actually be calling this method. All right, so now the next step. So first off, do Control S to save. So our structures, our classes save. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply this to Unity. So what we need to do is click on Cube. And we're going to add a component. So I'm going to hit add component. First thing we do is type in character, and there's character controller. So first add character controller. Character controller is like a pre-built box already. You don't have to do anything with it. You can adjust your settings accordingly. But I'm going to add another component, which is our player mover. So our player mover script. And with that, there's nothing else needed to do. All right, so all we need to do now is run it and see what happens. So I'm going to save everything first, put the game window on, and hit run. Okay, so if I click on the game window, So looks like we have control. It seems a little too close. So what I want to do is I want to actually move the follow camera a bit back, or just change its field of view. It's too close. Let's just go further back. That looks a bit better. Let's try again. There we go. So you have more visibility. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you that. So you see, I can't run into the tree. I have to go around the tree, and it actually kind of pushes me around the tree, right? And also I can't walk into walls, right? So I can't walk into the hill there, all right? So you have that ability now. But one thing I'm going to show you is that going left and right, I don't have the ability to turn around, right? That's the one thing I want to add now, is the ability to turn around. So, but yeah, you can see that you can go around. You can go through everything. So now let's add the final thing to this game, which is the ability to rotate and turn around. So we have to go back into our script and do that. So what I'm going to do is I need to have access to the location of the camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add a few more variables. We'll say so private transform. So that gives me the XYZ location details of the object I need. So the object I need is the camera. So the secondary camera, I'm going to call it camera location. All right. So I want access to the location, the details of this camera location. All right. Now the second thing I need is a private float. I'm going to call it mouse sensitivity or camera sensitivity, whatever you want to call it. 2.0 F could be like keyboard sensitivity, but I just need a bit of sensitivity there. It can be adjustable. We'll just leave it like that. Now I'm going to add another method below move, and I'm going to call it rotate. So I'm going to say private void rotate. All right. I want to get access to the horizontal, the left and right. So I don't really need the vertical. I just need the horizontal, left and right, the yawing basically, so that it shows the the rotation of the camera. So I'll say float horiz equals input dot get axes for horizontal. All right. Now I'm going to say transform dot rotate for, and now rotate is a vector 3. Okay, so we'll say 0 horiz times mouse sensitivity and 0. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to apply this also to the camera. So we're going to say camera location, but this time we're going to use a method called look at. Look at's a great method from Unity because you don't have to do anything to move your object around so that it's facing another object. I want it to always look at the transform. So the character that's in respect to that's being called for look at the game object will always face what you want it to face. In this case, I want it to face the cube, the transform of the cube, and that's it. Now I have to just call rotate inside update. And that's all. So there's only one extra step that needs to be done. We have to link the secondary camera to this camera location variable. Okay, so I'm just going to save it. And now go to Unity, let it do its thinking, because it needs to reread the script. And if I scroll down under cube, making sure cube is highlighted, go back to our player mover. One thing that I'll note is I don't see it because I made it so I made a brief mistake. So I switched back to the script for a second. Transform needs to be public because I need to link up the camera. So I need to say public transform camera location. Control S to save. Now I can switch back to Unity. There it is, camera location. Just drag follow camera. There. And now let's run it again. Just Control S to save. Hit play. And let's see what happens. There. So there you have it. Now we have a properly rotating camera. So it's actually going to continue following from behind the cube. So have the proper rotation going as well. All right. So there you have it. We have what we've learned in this lesson is a full-fledged terrain, how to build one using the terrain editor. So we learned how to sculpt hills and sculpt valleys and roadways in our case. We learned how to paint some textures and details onto our terrain. And finally, we learned how to add trees to our terrain. So you can see all these obstacles here that I'm trying to get around for our trees. Oh, I hit a dead end. So I got shafted with my own meanness there. Right? And finally, we learned how to add a character and how to control that character using character control. Oh, I'm super mean. I keep hitting these crevices, these dead ends. I'm like a victim of my own meanness here. All right. Okay. So there you have it. So don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and look forward to seeing you in the next Unity tutorial. All right. Take care and bye for now.